Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important units of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we shall be taking a very brief look at the tech marines of the armories of the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. I know. It is Wargear Wednesday, Baldermort, but what could be more relevant to Wargear than the Marines who maintain the most iconic weaponry in the entire setting? They literally keep it all running. Now, we have not really touched on the issues of the Adeptus Mechanicus, so some of this may seem rather odd at first, but please do know that I have a planned video on the horizon to cover just the basics of the Priesthood of Mars and its relevance in the Imperium. So we shall be exploring not only Adeptus Mechanicus, but in another entry we shall explore the other races and the general degeneration of technology in a very broad sense, showing how it may harken back to Asimov's Foundation books and the sci-fi of the silver screen. But all things in their order. I can only move so fast, and these will needs be whoppers, so my apologies for the delays. Now, let us return to the topic of the day, and, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, The Armory. Whether aboard a colossal, star-faring warship, or deep within its mountainous fortress monastery, a chapter's armory is where the great majority of its armored vehicles, gunships, weapons, and wargear are maintained and tended to when they are not being unleashed upon the Emperor's foes. The armory is both a branch of the chapter hierarchy and a physical location. Headed by uncanny and knowledgeable masters of the forge, the chapter masters tech marines all belong to the armory and are responsible for thousands of serfs and servitors. Their task is to ensure that the chapter's wargear and weaponry are repaired and their machine spirits placated so that they are ready to face the enemy in future conflicts. Whilst every chapter's armory is different in form, structure and size, they share many common traits. Each is a vast complex of immense forge furnaces, cells and alcoves lit by crackling braziers and cold lumen. Servo skulls formed from the craniums of favoured chapter serfs upon their deaths and affixed with precious servo tools, or bearing important messages, fly through the air. Service to the chapter rarely ends in death. Each of a chapter's vehicles and warsuits has its own antechamber that is a shrine unto itself, adorned with purity seals and vows of fidelity and devotion, scratched by serfs onto scraps of parchment. Each Space Marine vehicle is given a name upon its induction to the chapter, to reflect its role as a warrior, and is embraced as a battle brother itself. Its alcove is adorned with trophies and relics from the battles it has fought in, the Space Marines it has fought alongside, laying down the skulls of slaughtered foes, or the sanctified weapons of enemy champions. Thousands of serfs, technothralls, mecha-helots and servitors labour day and night in the scorching heat of the armory, all caked in ash, drenched in sweat, and stained with oils. Such is the thickness of the smog and sacred incense in the air, even servitors are regularly replaced, the mechanical systems clogged, and biological components choked. Human serfs breathe recycled air through rebreathers, though even this equipment fails to protect them from all of the particles that blacken the air. The reek of burning metal, lapping powders and blessed oils add to the heavy and cloying stench. The serfs' lifespans are rendered measurably shorter than their fellows working for the chapter elsewhere, and these labourers are often prone to terrible injuries in their work, such as the wrath of the machine spirits not treated with due care. The barrage on the senses is made complete by a cacophony of industrial workings and intoned sacred rites. The clang of piston hammers striking sheet metal rings through vaulted chambers. The curt orders of the tech marines are barely audible over the roar of adamantine grinders and plasma cutters. All this is set against the sonic backdrop of constant droning servitors, endlessly repeating binaric chants of reverence and the serfs' liturgies of dedication. Tech Marines. Amongst the Space Marines there are warriors whose command of war machines surpasses all others. Ancient pacts made with the Adeptus Mechanicus allows chapters to send warriors with an affinity for technology to Mars. There they begin the long, arduous journey of being inducted into the machine cult and becoming Tech Marines. Tech Marines possess knowledge of the Omnissiah's deeper mysteries. Theirs are the holy rites of awakening and appeasement, of repair and re-sanctification, so crucial to keeping a chapter's weaponry and war machines in working order. Of course, in being indoctrinated into the machine cult of Mars, the aspirant Tech Marines also develop dual loyalties that distance them from their battle brothers. However, they fight every bit as fiercely for their chapter as any of their comrades, proving their loyalty time and time again as they wade into battle with power axes swinging and servo arms deploying powerful weaponry against the foe. Tech Marines are especially fervent in their defense of their chapter's battle tanks and artillery pieces, braving storms of enemy fire to reach stranded or damaged vehicles and bring them roaring back into the fight. Tech Marines' proficiency as drivers, gunners and pilots is especially recognized. Once they have interfaced with a vehicle's machine spirit, the bond formed is lethally effective. Master of the Forge. The Master of the Forge is the most senior Tech Marine in the chapter. His grasp of arcane sciences and the mysteries of the Omnissiah are such that his skills are on par with those of Martian Tech Magi. He calms the most belligerent of machine spirits with but a whisper of a tech psalm, and can heal terrible wounds in a battle tank's hull at incredible speed. As with the Tech Marine brethren they command, Masters of the Forge are regarded with a degree of mistrust by chapter command, with some shunned on matters unrelated to their specialization. In chapters such as the Iron Hands and Astral Knights, which are more embracing of the mysteries of technology, they are revered individuals. These exceptions are relatively few. However, some Masters of the Forge can earn admirable reputations. Tech Marine War Gear. The unique role of the Tech Marines means they carry bespoke war gear. No Tech Marine goes to war without heavy servo arms and supple mechadendrites. These are powerful mechanical tools with the strength to lift entire battle tanks off the ground, or with the dexterity to deftly fix the smallest components and solder shut the most minute of wounds in a vehicle's flank. Some Tech Marines wear a formidable servo harness, with a pair of servo arms, a flamer and a plasma cutter. The servo harness enables the wearer to fix vehicles more efficiently and better combat the foe. It also enables them to rapidly construct or reinforce defensive positions. It is not uncommon for Tech Marines to carry grav pistols. In the 41st millennium, grav weapon technology is rare, known only to a select few. When fired, grav weapons affect the local gravity field, using the victim's own mass against them to lethal effect. Heavily armored targets are crushed as if by a mighty god, whilst vehicles are left as crumpled wrecks. End quote. The Tech Marines are a fascinating element of Warhammer, and I feel they really add to the entire gothic suffocation of the setting. For what could be more oppressive than to not even be able to understand the tools that you use? Now many of us will look at our computer or phone and say, well, Balders, that's true enough now. But it's not true. Not really. If any of us wanted to invest the time, gave it the attention it was due, the vast majority of us could take courses, watch videos, read books, and increase our knowledge of nearly anything we wished. The internet, the most powerful repository of information our race has ever known. A wonder of our age that is all too often taken for granted. But we could work it out, even silly old me, if given the time. But now imagine if you were utterly unable to even ask a question, could be burned at the stake for even opening a computer and moving any of its cables, were forbidden to read and learn about technology at all. To ask questions is to invite suspicion, to enact any form of thinking or change on an existing pattern or even object. That invites death by charge of tech heresy. Yes, you heard right. tech heresy. Even if you were a trained technician and somehow fell through a rift in the warp and ended up in the grim darkness of the far future, you may well be executed for changing a light bulb. Because you have not been trained by the tech priests of Mars, you have not performed the litanies. And so it is that the Marines that go to Mars to be trained, to become tech Marines, are quite rightly mistrusted by the rest of their chapters from that point on. For they will be the only Marines in the entire chapter who could even possibly have influence from outside. They are the only Marines who could have another agenda, orders contrary to the will of the chapter master. Although I do not know of a situation where the tech Marine has actually put their loyalty to Mars before their loyalty to chapter or cause, it is the nature of the Astartes to be wary, especially of their own. The scar of the Horus heresy, the betrayal of half of the legions of the Astartes, caused a welt on the very soul of the Imperium, one that may never be removed from the breasts of the Marines. For when the cost of betrayal is so very, very high, then the need for constant vigilance has to match this threat's intensity. But when a tech Marine may interject at a pre-attack tactical meeting to point out that Archaeotech is present, or even suspected, in a target location, and that, due to this, perhaps a more measured and careful approach may be best, it is then that the curse of the Horus heresy, like the oath of Fëanor, overshadows all. The fear of betrayal. And in those instances, the Battle Brothers only see a tech priest of Mars looking out from behind a Marine's helm, instead of a very reasonable, very loyal, and very passionate Astartes, who knows full well that one, just one, discovered STC could change the fortunes of the entire human race. Just one. But we shall explain that in the future. Yet despite all of these spectres of the past, the Tech Marine is an invaluable and a revered member of the chapters of Space Marines. For they are a link to the past as much as the apothecaries, just as important, if not more so, than any chaplaincy. For without the Tech Marines, the chapters would break down, the vehicles would stop, their armor deplete and their very gun barrels run cold. For the Tech Marines not only maintain the armories, they use the many servitors to manufacture as much as they can. For each and every chapter is an independent army, a singular supply line. Or at the very least, that is their goal. Total self-sufficiency and as much as possible. And much is possible when you have Tech Marines. Without them, inevitable death. It is why they, as well as the apothecaries, are often secreted inside the largest ships of a crusade fleet, hidden away for the protection of the entire chapter. But strangely, their mysticism with technology, which any of us would find risible if it were not so terrifying, also gives them a sheen of the occult. This is also augmented by the reflected reverence that is imparted to the very oldest of artifacts or weapons of yore. Again, they are alike to the apothecaries in that they protect the lineage of the chapter. The others the blood and the sinew. They the actual muscle of the chapter, the armor, guns and devices of war. And some of these vehicles or objects have more pedigree and service to the chapter than every last Marine in its present roster, and then some. They add to the false but very intoxicating mystery of the grim darkness of the future, because they show so very adeptly that all we hold dear, all we ever strove for, has been lost. Their mere existence is a stark and terrifying signal of the ignorance of the age, the death of potential, the contraction of information and knowledge, progress and ideas themselves, going backwards not forwards, and allowing everything of worth and goodness in the entire human condition to slowly by slowly rot away, until all that is left are tattered shreds barely clinging onto a shambling skeletal apparition. A corpse of the dream of the Imperium, of a return to the path of enlightenment. All gone. All because of Horus and the powers of chaos. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Tech Marines. If so, then please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.